Hi, I'm your host, Becky Davis, and you're watching Garden Wise, Santa Barbara's most informative show about sustainable landscaping. This winter's rain has offered little relief for the dry lawns across the county. Not to worry though, this episode is full of ideas about what to do with that dying lawn and how to get your landscape looking better than ever. But perhaps the first question to ask is, do you even need a lawn? Here to help with that decision is local landscape architect and educator Billy Goodnick in a new series called Water-Wise, Dollar-Wise Landscapes.
Hey, Stacy. Yes. Then you're Fred.
Exactly.
Well,
nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to see the faces behind the phone call. So what are we up to today? From our phone conversation, sounds like we're basically talking about lawns.
Well, I wouldn't really call it a lawn anymore. It's just dead
There's
stuff.
been no water on the lawn.
Yeah. Everyone in our neighborhood has replaced their lawn, and it looks great. And we look like the sore spot. He thinks it's going to rain again, and it will.
It will rain again. We got, what, 1/10 of an inch last month. I mean...
But not enough to establish a lawn, and who knows, it's just not consistent enough for us to maintain this big lawn.
So, yes, I'm guessing it's going to rain again. But it's good to keep in mind that we live in a climate where even when we have what we used to call normal rainfall, it's still not enough to keep a lawn pretty throughout the year. We get winter rains, we have dry, hot summers, so the irrigation has to come on, and we got to make sure we're using the water wisely.
Well, look at it this way. I mean, we have to make little sacrifices, I'll give you, but where are the kids going to play?
The kids are grown up and have moved out.
What about the grandkids?
We don't have grandkids.
What about the dog?
He's a teacup chihuahua.
So let me step in here a little bit. I think those are some legitimate reasons for having some lawn, the dog, and even just for appearance. But I think the important thing is to figure out how much lawn you're going to keep and what we can get rid of out there. To help people with that, I like looking at this, I call it a lawn decision tree. So the first question is, do you need a lawn? And yeah, you've got some valid reasons for it. So if you're keeping the lawn, first thing to think about is what quality of lawn does it need to be? Are we looking for PGA perfect putting green? Because if that's your idea of a lawn, there's a lot that goes into it. There's fertilization, there's fungicides, being right on time with mowing, and usually more water than we're trying to use in our climate right now. So first thing is quality. Next is how big does the lawn need to be in order to do what you want to do?
Oh, something largish.
It's about that.
Okay. So think seriously about what you really need to find that right balance in the yard and make that work. So the other is location. There's people who are trying to grow lawns in some really kind of silly places. Steep slopes, a lot of sun baking it, hard to make the water stick to it.
It's a little shadier in the backyard, but it still gets some sun. Front yard is pretty exposed.
Okay. So maybe we just look at focusing on just the amount that we need to keep and making sure it's really in the best spot to succeed. Last thing is best practices, and this is something we talk about a lot. Is your irrigation system the best that it could be? Are you using smart controller so that it turns off in the rainy season and comes back on when it's hot? Not over fertilizing, that tends to send pollutants out. Just timing the water properly, trimming the heads so that they're not spilling all over the sidewalk. That's what makes you a responsible lawn owner. So quality of lawn, what's the right size lawn? Is it growing in the best location? And are you using the best practices? Are you a responsible lawn owner? So that's something you need to think about some.
Okay. I think I have a win-win situation.
Okay.
I will give you your lawn in the back as long as we can get rid of the lawn in the front.
Maybe. Okay, that doesn't sound bad. That sounds good. But if I agree, what happens to the front lawn? It looks like scorched earth right now.
Yeah.
That's where I come in.
Thank you.
Options in the front yard are just to make it beautiful. And I like the idea of having some of the garden that looks out at the street, the curb appeal sort of thing, but also think about what your garden looks like when you're in the house looking out. There's a little illustration here. A typical garden, you've got the trees and the bigger plants up against the house, and then everything tapers down, a little bit of lawn. And really, when you're in the house looking out, you're seeing parked cars, you're seeing traffic going by. Another way to think about the front yard is to create sort of a high point a little ways back, so a little bit of the garden is focused out toward the street. And the rest of it, when you're in the house looking out, it's a garden that's looking back at you. So, give that a little consideration. Looks like from the photos you've got enough space to do something like that. So these are all things I want you to think about before we move too much further.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about.
Yeah. Well, do you mind if we think this over and we'll get back to you and tell you what we decided?
I think that's the best way to go. Go to waterwisesb.org, start looking at some ideas on what you can do with the garden, and I'll be here when you need me, and help us just a click away. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Billy.
Stacy,
Thanks
Fred.
for having us.
Hey, you're very welcome.
Say you do decide to get rid of your lawn. Where do you begin? In our next segment, we learn about a local organization that's helping residents start the process.
I was part of a Sweetwater Collaborative, and this project here is a collaboration with Sweetwater Collaborative, and I was more organizational, just helping start it and develop it. But then I noticed two things. I noticed that wow, the drought's coming on, it's getting more serious. This is a couple of years ago, and also I had a teenage son, and I became aware that it's hard for young people, teenagers, to get jobs. And I knew about sheet mulching and that it'd be good for the drought. So I thought, well, we can help with the drought and we can provide work opportunities for young people at the same time.
In addition to providing jobs for high school and college students, Youth Drought Project is also educating them about water conservation.
I've learned that there's a lot of different ways to be conservative with our water. Brad tells us a lot of things about how the lawn tends to be the most wasteful part of the house. It's kind of crazy because I never thought of it that way. But in essence, I've learned how to be more careful with my own water usage. I've also learned some job skills because I don't have a job experience like before this. I've had none. And so this has been a really great way for me to get more involved.
The organization focuses primarily on helping people remove their lawns.
We're doing what's called sheet mulching. It's the most effective way we know of eliminating lawns. The other ways of eliminating lawns are chemicals. The problem with chemicals is that, first of all, it's a toxic chemical that kills other stuff in the soil, and so it's not that good for the environment. But also, it's not even very effective. You got to do it 3 times. You got to water a lot in between to get the stuff green for it to work, and so it's just doesn't even save much money. People think it's an easy way. You can use black plastic. That's effective. You got to do it in the summer, but then you got all this plastic to get rid of, and it kills the microbial, biota, I guess it's called, in the soil. Another way is to manually remove it. You just can't get everything. It's a huge amount of work. So what this does is we cover the grass. It can be green, it can be dead, with some sort of sheeting material. Typically cardboard is the most common, and we use specific kinds of cardboard that are good. If you use cardboard that's like really soft and maybe recycled material, which sounds good, but just doesn't hold up long enough before it decomposes. We also use some agricultural sheeting that's designed for this sort of thing, in place of black plastic and plastics that are used on fields, because it can ultimately decompose and go back into the soil. Now, it's important to use good cardboard to get enough mulch on it to keep the moisture in the soil. What you might see here is the trenching. We trench around the edges at this diagonal so that the mulch can go 4 inches, all the way to the bottom, and we get the roots out right along the edge so they don't grow out the edge. One other thing important about the process is just putting it down is not the whole process. No process for eliminating grass is 100% effective. Something survives. So even with this, here and there, something is likely to come through. So the last part of the process is to monitor it, and anything that does come up, yank it out very quickly. 5 minutes a week. It's very little work, maybe not even that, maybe a minute or two, just whatever came up. You just walk around, look, get it out of there. If you do that, it'll eventually be eradicated in 1 or 2 seasons.
Not only will sheet mulching save you on maintenance, you may even be able to get the costs covered as well.
It's especially easy right now on your wallet because there's a state rebate that covers most or all of what we do. It's called the state turf rebate. It's only for areas that don't have turf rebates already. And we don't. We have a smart landscape rebate, which is a nice thing, but it's really not focused on turf, so it qualifies us for the state rebate because we don't have that. And it pays $2 a square foot for up to 1,000 square feet, which is maybe the size of an average front lawn. This one's bigger. And our costs are about $1 a square foot, not including some of the extras that are required. But you can get up to a couple thousand square feet sheet mulched and have it paid for by the state. Funding is only until the money is used up, and we don't know how long that'll take. It started last fall, so it's a good time to get rid of your lawn and get some help with it.
We'll be right back with more Garden Wise.
I added mulch to my trees and plants.
I put in a laundry to landscape gray water system to irrigate my fruit trees.
I removed my lawn and planted water-wise native plants and installed drip irrigation.
I stopped watering my lawn.
Do your part by saving water in your garden. Get a free water checkup from your water provider. Keep saving water, Santa Barbara County.
Meet the most fascinating man in the world. When droughts happen, water experts go to him for water-saving actions. His front lawn requires no water because he replaced it with water-wise plants. He only works 2 days a week, and so do his sprinklers. He uses so little water, overwatered plants seek refuge in his yard.
I know a lot about saving water, but when I want to know more, I go to waterwisesp.org. Let's save together, my friends.
Welcome back. One of the most important aspects to having a thriving water-wise garden is to have healthy soil. Up next, we'll learn what it takes to build and maintain vibrant soil biology.
My name is David White, and we are here at Reeves Creek Ranch, which is in the east end of the Ojai Valley. And I run a non-profit organization out of here called the Center for Regenerative Agriculture. And particularly, we teach about soil food web, and we're going to learn a little bit about the soil food web and how that affects plant health today. What's really not known so well, I think, is the influence of soil biology on soil plant health. And plants take in carbon dioxide from the air and they release it as sugars into the soil in the root zone, in the rhizosphere, right around the roots. And that feeds and attracts and feeds biology that bring things to the roots. And that's how plants are fed, because they feed the biology in the soil. So if you don't have the biology in the soil for those plants to feed, then you're not going to have such healthy plants. In terms of using soil food web techniques to grow your food, one of the things is, or to grow anything, is you want to do, there's a broad categorization would be, am I growing annuals or am I growing perennials? And generally, perennials will require a more fungally dominated soil. So we want to see more fungus in the soils around perennials. And so an example here we have a perennial Washington navel, and around about it has wood chips, and wood chips are a food for fungus. So we're controlling, evaporation, we're covering up the soil so there's protection for soil biology, but we're also providing the foods for fungal hyphae to feed on, in that we're providing wood. Now, if I was trying to grow annuals, let's say I had a raised bed, which I do at some of the school gardens that I run, we would mulch and cover the soil with straw, which is more of a bacterial food, because annuals tend to be more dependent on bacterially dominated soils. One of the simplest things to keep in mind with soils is that we don't want to have bare soil. Bare soil will erode, bare soil will oxidize, bare soil, it doesn't provide support for soil biology. So covering soil, not having bare soil is key, and that could be from cover crops, could be from mulching. You can mulch with cardboard, with paper, with wood chips, with straw. There's many things that you can mulch with, but you can also grow cover crops. And that provides protection for the soil biology. And if you're doing that, then you can also add soil biology to it. You could actually put compost down and then cover it. One of the things that we do is that we make composts and compost teas, actively aerated compost teas, which are basically preparations of biology that then you can add to the soil. The most sensitive instrument that we have when it comes to compost is our nose. And anytime that you have compost and you smell it and it is bad, then it means that you've gone anaerobic, that there's been anaerobic bacteria present in that soil sample or that compost sample. And a good example of this might be, and I'm sure this is universal, that you've left something in the back of your fridge that was lettuce and now is kind of goo, and you take it out and you don't even want to smell it because you know it smells bad. And you're not going to eat that. And there's a reason you're not going to eat that, is because that we are totally programmed to avoid things that smell bad, that have evidence of anaerobic activity in them. And it's the same for soil. So if you're using something to treat your soil that smells very bad, then it probably is indicative that it's got anaerobic, something has gone anaerobic, which is not good for soil health. So ideally, when you pick up compost, your compost, any purchased compost, anything that you get and you smell it, it smells like forest floor. That's the smell we're going for. And that would indicate that you haven't gone anaerobic, that you've got aerobic bacteria present there, and you've probably got the other classes of soil biology that you need. The other thing that's key is moisture level in compost, and a squeeze test is key. If you can get a drop of fluid out of your compost, then you've probably got about 50% moisture. If you squeeze your compost and let your hand open and it falls apart, then it's dry and you haven't got enough fluid in there to support soil biology. And so what I want to invite you to do is to come over to our compost area and we'll have a look at what we're doing there. Here's some of our compost work area. And first off, just if this was any compost pile that I was visiting, I would want to smell it first. So it smells to me like forest floor. And then I want to do a moisture test. And so I can let it open and I can see that it stays together as a clump. It didn't just fall apart. What I would like to see is a drop of water come out. And I can't get a drop of water out there. So this is towards the top of the pile. It's a little bit dry, actually. It's not too bad. It's a little bit dry. But the proof is looking at this under the microscope and seeing what biology there is in it. You can see the surface. It's got a lot of wood chips in it, so we're trying to grow fungally dominated compost to then use around our perennials. If we were trying to grow kale or row crops, then we'd probably be more trying to make a bacterially dominated pile. And you know, this size is pretty good. It's maybe about a cubic yard. It's hard to get thermal compost to happen in much smaller areas. We want this to heat up. Ideally, it'll get up above 131 degrees, which kills the seeds, if there are any seeds in there. And then you want to turn it so that all of the parts of the pile end up going through the center, and all of it heats up to 131 over a time period. Like you might turn it, for the homeowner, might turn it 3 times. The goal is to get balanced biology in your soil, especially if you've got balanced compost. It's got all members of the different classes in there. It's got bacteria, which they all usually do unless they're actually toxified, fungi, nematodes, protozoa, and microarthropods. If you've got all of those things in there, then you've got balanced biology and you're going to have healthy plants. So it's simple things: covering your soil, cover crops, putting compost down. These are all simple things that can improve the health of your plant through soil health, soil food web, soil biology. I think in terms of resources to follow up on, the organization I run is Center for Regenerative Agriculture, and it's based here in Ojai, and the website is ohaicra.org. And there's some insights there as to soil food web and making worm bins, that kind of thing. And one of the things the Center for Regenerative Agriculture does is we do and host free soil testing workshops where people can bring samples of their soil, and then we'll look at it under the microscope and project it onto a screen, and they can actually see the biology in their own compost or soil samples. And that's really empowering and enlightening, and I hope to be able to offer more of those.
Once you have healthy soil, you're ready to start planting. But there are a few things to consider before mapping out your landscape. Up next, Oscar Carmona, an instructor for the county's Green Gardener program, will teach you everything you need to know.
Hi there, Oscar Carmona, owner of Healing Grounds Nursery. I also teach the Sustainable Landscaping program, the Green Gardener certification class that's offered through Santa Barbara City College. And today we're going to talk about the right plant in the right place. So the first thing we want to talk about is a microclimate in a landscape environment. And what a microclimate is a unique area of your garden that is distinct in its conditions from others. And believe it or not, even in a small residential lot, you can have as many as 5, 6, 7 microclimates. Now, there's 5 things that plants need fundamentally to do well, and that is that they need light, they need favorable temperature ranges for the type of plant that it is, they need proper space to grow into maturity, soil conditions also are important, and then of course water. We take these concepts and we apply them to a given site, and here we're at the Goleta Water District Edible Landscape Demonstration Site, and you can see from their design map here the layout of this garden. One of the first places to start is to go close to any structures that you might have, whether it be a home or a garage, and realize that each side of your building structure is a different microclimate, and that has to do with the orientation of the sun as it relates to that building at any given time of the year, and also that affects the temperature ranges, and that those 2 conditions are very important to determining what you're going to plant there. If we're looking at this map, basically the top part here is the south side of the house or the structure, the north side, the west side here to the right, and over to the left is the east side. So what you're going to find is that on the east side is you're going to get the morning light, and therefore partial shade loving plants will do favorably better on the east side of your house. The north side will typically generally be in shade. The west and the south sides are usually the hottest growing environments that you can have in your home landscape. And that is because in Santa Barbara we have a south-facing orientation, and so typically the sun is a direct hit on anything growing on the south side of the building. And similarly on the west side, you're going to get afternoon sun. As we move away from the house, this happens to be a relatively flat landscape, but you could typically have maybe a slope here. That would be another microclimate. You could have poor soil on this side. You could have good soil on the other side. Those would be other 2 discerning properties for microclimates. Another would be if you had large trees. These are not very large at this point. Someday they'll grow into larger plants, but as they do, they're going to create more shade. So shade is also another discerning microclimate environment that you need to pay attention to, and consequently you want to make sure that you're going to put shade-loving plants in those areas. The second point I'd like to make relative to determining the right plant in the right place is to avail yourself to the important information that comes along with the plants at the nursery in the pots. And that would be what we call a pot tag. Now on the pot tag, you're going to find the 5 pieces of information that I told you were very important for determining the plant's overall health and in growing. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they find a nice, beautiful little potted plant in a 1-gallon pot, and they think, oh, how cute, and they go and plant it right up next to a building or right up next to other plants so it looks filled in at the beginning, not realizing that that plant really wants to be 40 feet tall and 30 feet wide. And so if you look on the pot tag, you're going to find those important bits of information. It's important to look at that, and if you're not good at remembering, go ahead and place it right next to the plant upon planting, and that's going to remind you exactly what those conditions are that are going to help make that plant grow successfully. If you don't have access to a pot tag because you lost it, there's 2 other sources of information that I want to mention that I think you should avail yourself to. The second is called the Western Garden book, and it's a wonderful book with lots of really great pictures and not necessarily a lot of wording, but it's got the important pieces of information, again, as I said, that you're going to need to help that plant grow to a healthy, mature plant. And the third thing, which is really a great resource in our community, is the WaterWise SB website. It has a Spanish translation. If you want your landscaper, perhaps a Spanish-speaking landscaper, to reference it, there's information in Spanish. And it's got not only plants and their conditions, but there's a wide selection, an amazing selection of plants for just about any microclimate environment that you can find in your home or landscape environment. The third point I'd like to make about water management is that you need to understand that plants access water that's available in the root zone. That's where the roots are growing, and for the vast majority of plants, whether they be shrubs, trees, or smaller plantings, that root zone is typically about 24 inches. For lawns, it's about 8 inches. And so basically you want to verify that the water is saturating that root zone, and once it does, then any water beyond that, watering beyond that point, is basically wasted water. And one of the ways that you can determine how the water is leaching through that root zone is with a soil probe, and I have one here. And it's simply enough, you can insert the soil probe down into and around the plants into the root zone. Give it a little twist here, and this is a well-hydrated garden site. You can pull it up, and you can basically see here that the darker area, this is the top, is much more moist, and it dries out as you get down, but there's still some moisture here. With this kind of indicator, we know that the irrigation system is probably doing a good job of watering. Make sure that the time allotment for that cycle is no more than it takes for the water to pass through into the root zone. Again, no more than 24 inches. So once you determine the microclimates in your home environment, landscape environment, or work environment, and you've thought a little bit about the options that are at your disposal for planting in those environments, it's time to put those two things together to create the right plant in the right place. Being able to do so is going to enable you to enjoy your plants through maturity in all their natural beauty, but I think more importantly, it's going to provide you with less disease problems and pest problems, because the fundamental thing to know is for the right plant in the right place is that they're less susceptible to disease and pests.
For more information about the Green Gardener program or to sign up, visit greengardener.org. Well, that does it for this episode. Remember, you are the agent of change, and together we can conserve water and create beautiful, climate-appropriate gardens. There are lots of resources online to help. Visit waterwisesb.org for tips or to view past episodes. If you have any questions or comments about the show, you can give us a call at 564-5311. I'm your host, Becky Davis, and keep it water wise, Santa Barbara.